Okay guys, so here we are again. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the oil on the Ice Bear. Now this is going to apply for pretty much most of the 150s, 50cc's, scooters. They're all about the same engine configuration setup. So basically let's run through what you're going to need before you start to do this. Me personally, I run the Valvoline 4T 4-stroke 10W40 full synthetic. Oil change intervals, you can do it. A lot of people jump all over the place. Usually you can do it every 500 miles is a good interval change. I'm just under 1,000 miles on this now, so I've already changed it 3 times. So, but that was in, brand new, the break-in oil, which is basically crap oil. And then I changed it again, and then I changed it again just to make sure any pieces of metal or break-in wear stuff that would be in there is out. So you'll need the oil. It's going to take it says 750 milliliters. I usually run about 800 to 820, give or take, a guesstimate. That way it's completely leveled out. You're going to need a ratchet or a wrench, and it's going to need to be a 17 millimeter. Alright, and you're definitely going to need a funnel. You're going to need a funnel, the drain pan. Now, it's pretty simple. On the Ice Bear anyways, you just got to find the dipstick, which is back behind the exhaust. Can't really see it through there, but it's right down here by the exhaust right here. So go ahead and take that out. You can put that on your little towel. So once that's out, you're going to want to take your ratchet, make sure it's on the loosening side. And then the drain bolt is going to be, so this is going to be your fan. It's going to be directly underneath, right here, this big bolt. There's another one on the other side, but I would drain it from this because behind this is where the spring and the mesh filter is. So basically you're going to get up underneath there with your wrench, take it, make sure it's on there pretty solid. And then once you break it loose, before you take it out of the way, go ahead and get your pan ready. Plug that underneath there. And then you should be able to just hand screw it off. And now here's the spring. You got the spring, the cap with the seal, and then you have your little mesh filter that's in there as well. Now this you can usually clean out. You can look on the inside of it, make sure there's nothing in there. Usually they're pretty good. Make sure it's not dented or damaged anywhere. Make sure that seal is pretty decent. Let those guys sit. Got the spring. And then whenever you put it back in as well, make sure there's no metal shavings. Like down there you can see there's a little chunk of metal still from when it's breaking in. So it's a good thing that I'm changing it. So while that thing's draining, I usually have like a second towel with me. Like this one I'll let it sit so I can wipe all that stuff off. Go ahead and grab another towel, wipe your hands off, because it's definitely not the cleanest thing in the world. And then you just basically let that drain out. And while you're doing that, I mean, sometimes I'll go through, like, probably around the next oil change, you can change the spark plug. You can change the spark plugs out whenever. I'll probably change it out. I switched that one out at around 600 miles. It was probably about 5. I'll probably change out the next oil change. It seems like it's a lot. Like mileage wise, it doesn't seem like they go that long, but you have to think, just with the oil alone, these things, it's not like a car. These things are in a high RPM for a lot of the time. So that's a lot of wear on everything. So as long as you can get fresh oil to it, it'll last a while. It'll treat you good. But so while that thing's draining, usually what I like to do is while I'm checking everything, especially all this stuff, you want to make sure the filter isn't all clogged up. So if it's not clogged up, you know, you can just go through, clean it. Don't worry about that. Most of them have that little seam mark on them. So as long as that rubber seal right there isn't all chewed away, I mean, which this thing's not. This thing's pretty new. I mean, it's not even 1,000 miles on it. It's one of the 2017 versions. So, but some of the older gy6 engines, like let's say you have, I don't know, like a 2006 or something like that, or any kind of traditional scooter like a Phantom, or you got the Yamatis and so on and so forth, Tao, then I would just check everything out. Now this engine goes at 157 QMJ, but they're all pretty much the same setup, really, especially with changing the oil and having this like mesh screen filter on them and the spring and so on. You can actually buy upgraded oil kits for them, which is basically it's basically the same plug. It's from Primo, and basically in the bottom of that cap there's actually a magnet that sits down in it. There's a magnet in that, and then for the transmission side of it, there's actually basically a little magnet, almost like hot glued to it, to the end of it, to pick up any kind of metal debris that could possibly drop down. Like the magnet will basically sit down in there. This hole's a little bit more opened up, and there's a magnet that'll sit down in it. But overall, it's not too bad of a process. The only thing that's a little rough on these, specifically the Ice Bear Mad Dog Generation 4s, is how that where the dipstick goes. That's how you're gonna fill it, and it's a tight spot. I should have got a more of a flexible fill funnel than anything, but I didn't. I like to fight with myself. But yeah, once you go through, you can just go through and just wipe all this stuff out. Like, try to get this little chunk of metal, as you can see, a little chunk of metal out of there. That's still from the break-in. You guys see that? But clean all that stuff out, clean off the seals, make sure they're still actually good, not rotting away, which this one looks pretty good. And you clean off all the dirt and stuff around it. Even though no one's ever probably going to see that, considering it's underneath of it. Now putting it back on, sometimes it is a little bit of a pain, considering the fact that, well, one, you have the spring to fight with, but overall it's really not that bad. So you got that, we got the spring cleaned up, mesh filter cleaned up, this cleaned up. Now when you go to stick it back in, it'll stick in like this. You got the spring like that, mesh filter will sit in there like this, and then it'll basically shove up in there. And then once you push it in, basically it'll constrict the spring and cause it to seal the top against the top of the engine. So that looks like it's about done dripping, and I put a board down by the kickstand to try to even it out. That way it all comes out. Not that way, because it'll lean too far over and it'll end up having old oil sit in there. The last oil change I did, I actually took an an air compressor and an air gun and actually blew into that side, into the dipstick side, and actually try to blow out some more of the old oil. I'll probably do that the next oil change too, because if I had that compressor on, you guys would definitely not hear anything that I'm saying. So then take your funnel, and then you basically just have to try to get it down in there to where the dipstick is. And this is the part where one of the flexible ones would come into play, because like I said, this is almost a pain. So that's probably definitely going to be a next move for me, getting one of those. Okay, so with that all in there, even though it's not in there all that great, get that to hold it. So got that in there, as you can see. So now that that's in, so that part's set up. Now we can go ahead and drop all this stuff back in, and you can usually do it by hand to try to start it. Sometimes, like I said, it is a pain. So you go down here and you try to get it back in that hole, and then since the spring's there, it's trying to fight it. So basically you just have to hold it and try to start it by threading it in. Once you get a couple threads in, go ahead and get it up there. Push the drain pan out of the way, or you can throw it over here just in case it wants to try to leak oil from that, which it shouldn't, but shouldn't and won't are two different things. And you can go ahead and even wipe that down so it's clean again. Wipe away some of that excess oil that could have spilled around it. And then now you go back to the wrench, make sure it's on tight, and you can see it slowly spin. And now you don't have to make these overly tight. Make it just enough so it's just a little over hand tight, because this is all basically like aluminum base, so it will strip, and you don't want that stripping out. Trust me on that. So move that out of the way. You guys can still see it. And that's pretty good right there. Then we'll go over to here, finish wiping that off. And then, of course, same thing with this. Go ahead and wipe your dipstick down. And like it says, renewing, it says 0.75 milliliters. That's, for me, that's kind of low, because when you actually put it in and it's on a level ground, on the hashtags actually on the stick, it'll be about right before the top of this circle crown. So I put in a little extra to get it completely full, because like I said, these things are spinning at high RPM, so you want as much oil in there to help keep it lubricated as possible. So we'll go over here, grab our oil, and I already have it preset here. I have just about a little over 800 milliliters. So, and then a full quart will have about 946 milliliters, if I'm correct. Yeah. 946. So we'll pull that out, and usually a lot of people jump. It all depends on where you live, really. I live in a colder climate. I live up in Pennsylvania, so I mean in the summertime it does get pretty hot, but most of the time, like right now, it's almost July. It's May 29th, and it's still like it's like 62 degrees, 64 degrees. So to me personally, that's not all that hot. I mean, now later in July or August is when it starts getting warm and it's like steady 80s, 90s. That's when I would worry about something like that. But now filling it up, basically, the good thing of having this big funnel is you can just pour it in. You just have to watch it down here now, because sometimes if you pour too much in, especially since it's not one of those more or less flexible hoses, it'll try to overflow in it. So you just got to pour it in a little bit and just basically let it eat it up. Just very slow process. On other scooters it's way easier because it's more of just a straight shot. And another thing you can also do too is you could actually, if you really in all honesty wanted to, you could drop the exhaust off of it, but in all honesty that's too much. Just to change the oil, just to drop the exhaust off of it, that's almost too much. And as long as you change the oil regularly, they should run for a while. I mean, I've talked to people and a lot of them were older guys, like maybe late 30s, early 40s, who used to mess with these things back in the 2000s, and they said they've actually ran theirs all the way up into 10,000 miles without even rebuilding the cylinder heads or anything. They said usually, as long as you take care of them, just like anything else, you take care of them, give them routine maintenance, they'll last a while. But like right there, it tripped a little bit because I went too heavy on it. So I definitely got to get one of those flexible hoses. And another thing you can do to prolong the life of these, it's kind of hard to find it, but if you can run non-ethanol gas through the carburetors, it'll actually save the carburetor jets and stuff from getting all clogged up from this ethanol gas.